Hi, and welcome to Coach Talk. I have been doing series after series, but unfortunately, I was stopping myself from doing this, thinking that I didn't want to take advantage of the actual circumstance right now. But coaching individuals have made me aware of lots of issues that have been raised. So many issues where I think that we actually should be speaking about this on a wider platform, and there's lots and lots of information out there. So what I want to do is to basically bring guests along each week to discuss things that we are all talking about, but we're not having the right information. Obviously, we all have our own perspectives, and we are also going to be giving information from our own experience. However, I do have certain professionals and experts that will be coming on board to maybe give some awareness so that we can actually have much more substance to the content that's being out there. I hope that if there's anything that you would like me to raise, please email me privately. You can find me on my website, www.coachfm.com. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce to you my first guest, Abdullah. How are you? Thanks for coming in today.
Thank you very much for having me on your show. Thank you.
Well, we were talking earlier, and the reason why I called you in today is because of your expertise in being a, information consultant, security, safety, especially around the internet. So I think it's really important that today's topic is going to be about the challenges in social media. So what I feel that is we're going to be discussing a variety of things. You have obviously got the expertise, plus you also have had talks in schools and other platforms. So I want my audience to get the same sort of information. So if you would please start us off as to what exactly are the challenges of social media.
Thank you very much. So as you mentioned, I'm an information security consultant. I've been doing in the field for over 12 years. And over the years, there have been a number of challenges, especially in today's time, in this modern era, where social media and the internet has taken our lives. We are stuck behind the phone most part of the day, or behind the screen, looking at the information. We sometimes use it for the good, but most times we use it for the bad. So the challenges we have right now, especially with the younger generation, with the families, with the social interaction, that we don't have that bond that we used to have from back when we were, or when I was much smaller. So now that everyone is really stuck on their phones, they're playing games, they're checking out things online. And sometimes that bond, that union is breaking up. And now I feel that with the current pandemic, I think it's much more serious, because now families just want to, stay away from each other. They can't interact with each other. They can't deal with matters. So the best thing for them to do in terms of calm each other down is really just sit down, give the young person or the young adult, or even the adult themselves, an electronic device, a tablet, computer, whatever, and they just get lost in the World Wide Web. But this is obviously not always good. There are benefits and there are negatives.
Okay, yes, no, of course. I mean, as you were speaking, it's raised a lot of topics for me. Like I said, I wasn't planning to do these kind of discussions, but obviously with everything that's happened, I do coach clients privately, and also seeing what's out there on social media, I kind of took it upon myself only in the last week to sort of come up with this idea to actually bring about guests like yourself to discuss these kinds of issues. Obviously, we're always told to get offline, and now being told to stay at home, it's really difficult to find that balance, because we do get bored, and the easiest thing to do is to go online and sort of search, play games. So what are the main concerns about being online? I mean, personally, I do use social media a lot for business, and even then I have to hold myself back and sort of, have some sort of balance where I have to even literally put the phone upstairs and walk downstairs without taking it with me, so I don't have that hour or half an hour of actually looking at it. So, and that's me, an adult. So so what are the dangers really, and what can we do about it?
So, I mean, with the internet, of course, there are benefits. We can use the internet to develop our social skills, our personal development. We can learn about cultures. We could read so many things. However, this is hard work, it's draining, and it takes a lot of energy. It's more fun to play games, and it's more fun to interact with the wide social network on the internet from different cultures and different people around the world. The issue we have with the internet at the moment is people who don't control their traffic flow, or they don't control what they see or what they read, there's a lot of stuff in there for people who don't understand. Like I'm talking about maybe children or people from different cultures. Like you have violence, you have profanity, you have adult content, you have gambling, and all these things, they have a negative effect on our behavior on the long term.
And
So
usually this pops up in, like, for example, adverts in between the games, in between all of this, where there's no control.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, these come up all the time, especially how the internet works is they collect information about you. So whenever you visit a website, maybe you want to buy, I don't know, a fridge, or you want to buy a new game, or you want to buy trainers, they collect that information. So whenever you go to a different website, they advertise what you were looking for before. So they have all that information about you anyway. Now, it's not always good to, I mean, that information is available, and there's ways to stop it. However, it's quite difficult. But what they do is stuff like when you play games, like people who play Fortnite or Call of Duty or Minecraft, Movie Star Planet. These are all games for
Roadblock.
yeah, Roblox. Yeah, they love that. Whenever for a person to have more fun in the game, they have these credits that you buy online, and one of the dangers is they have these clickbaits. Clickbait is a form of a link or a thumbnail that people click into in order to go to a different website. And the idea here is for them to trick a user. So for example, people who play Fortnite, they have these clickbaits on different websites saying, have 1,000 Fortnite coins, for example. And people go to these websites, they obviously, that site is not really a site where they could get the coin. The whole idea of that site is for them either to collect information about you, either to read a content that, you know, it's not relevant to you, but that's how they generate revenue and money via advertising. Or it could be even worse. Sometimes when you click on those sites, they download this file into your machine automatically. Now that file could be something as an adware, or it could be something more serious. It could be malicious software, virus, Trojan horse, a logic bomb, ransomware, where it encrypts all of your hard drive. So the idea here is we need to control these interactions that happen in your machine, and ideally there are controls in place a user or a person could take in order to protect themselves online. Now, one thing I want to mention is that's quite important, is that we can't stop someone from using the internet. It's the way of life now. Mm-hmm. But what we can do is we can control, and we could balance, like you mentioned, and social interaction with families and friends. And I mean, it's quite difficult with the family and friend part. But the other side of it is controlling, having fun. So that's the issue, that we need to balance it and make sure we do the right things on the internet and protect ourselves from being online.
I think what you've raised so far is so vital. I think so many parents themselves are not aware of this extra added different websites that they can click on, and they just hear their children normally speaking about it, but not realizing the actual technical side of things, and how they can be obviously putting themselves in really vulnerable situations with information and things like that. So this is a really good topic for not just the children, but also the adults. And the children, for them to learn, because I think a lot of them are not aware of the dangers. And yes, we are talking now about the children and certain gaming that you've mentioned, which is really, really popular. And people don't see it as something detrimental. People don't see it, but there's so many other effects. Like generally, I know, studying the mind and the brain, like, you know, it's really responsible for addiction, behavior, especially the aggression amongst children. And teenagers generally have that sort of like hormonal changes, but the violence in some of these games, and obviously parents are not as strict, or even if they have awareness, they probably don't have that control. So there's so much that, you know, actually is involved in this sort of topic, and it does add and contribute to anxiety and depression as well, and some sort of psychological and physical effect. So as parents, what kind of like controls can we actually sort of exert in the actual technical side of it? Or is it just you making your kid aware as to what it is?
So that's a good point. I mean, you mentioned depression and anxiety, because there has been a study where they show people who use social media are more depressed and they have more anxiety. And the reason being, I know I'm going probably off topic towards your question, but I'll come to that. But because we have social media tools like Instagram, Facebook, you have YouTube, and you have all these influences who they show their lavish lifestyle, their lavish cars, their bling and everything. And young kids and even adults, some young adults, even adults to be honest,
Yeah.
they look up.
Mhm.
They look up towards these people. They want to be just like them. However, they don't know how, some of them don't understand, especially younger generation. They don't understand that life is not that easy. These guys get endorsed, they get paid to advertise these things because of the followers they have. And for you to build up towards this level of lavish lifestyle, it takes a lot of hard work. You have to study, you have to get a degree, you have to finish your GCSEs. It's just so much things to do. And when they feel that they can't achieve that in a short period of time, they feel depressed, they go through anxiety, and it affects them in the long run. And that has been shown that it does prove that. Now, going back to the issues also with the internet is also the chat rooms. I forgot to mention, is there's a lot of chat rooms on these different game platforms. And even though there are moderators on those chat rooms to kind of look at what people are saying, at the same time, the profanity is being censored so that bad language doesn't get displayed on your screen. However, you don't know who the other end of that chat room is, or that community chat. Exactly. So the issue you have here is that it could be I don't know, an adult talking to a 7-year-old, and they're saying all sorts of things. It might not be detectable by the moderator because they can't read every line all the time. And the algorithm, the computer algorithm, can't pick up everything because they have ways of deviating from these algorithms. But we have to be careful as well about who we speak to online and how we could interact with these people. Now, going back to how we can protect ourselves from the internet. From a technical perspective, we can obviously install antivirus on our phones or on our tablets or on our laptops or any electronic device that uses the internet. We should keep it patched all the time. So we install the manufacturer's updates. So whenever Windows, for example, or Apple or Android or Google, they send an update to your phone, make sure you update it, because these have security updates to protect you from certain malicious activities that are available online.
Is that also game consoles as well?
Yeah. So with game consoles, it's a bit more secure because there are limited functionality. However, it's still hackable. So like people like Sony, Xbox, they always release updates on their devices, not just from a performance perspective, but they also have some updates to do with security whenever they discover a vulnerability available on their specific hardware, or it's a console or a laptop or a phone or whatever. They always release patches. Now, other things we can do is, and this is quite important, is parents should educate. They should have an open discussion with their kids. They should sit down and talk about what they're doing online, get an understanding of what's happening, what the experiences they've seen, because sometimes a young person or even an adult, and there's a lot of people actually within the adult age group, they also get bullied online. And this is one of the things I want to mention, is that when adults talk to their kids or when they talk to each other, they want to get an understanding of what's happening. They want to have this discussion in order to get a feel of what a person's activity is online. And by doing this, we could find out about who they've been talking to, what websites they've visited. And sometimes I might feel that you visited a website that is wrong because I'm the expert, but then you might not feel that it's bad. But then when I tell you what it is, you know what, I did go to this website, it downloaded this file, I don't know what it was. I double click that file, but now my computer's slow. I don't know why. But then I said, you know what, that might be a virus or it might be an adware. And so parents should have an open discussion with their kids, or adults should have an open discussion with themselves. With regards to the kids, they should educate their families, their parents, about the internet. They should speak to their families. They shouldn't be afraid. We live in this current climate where if a child done something wrong and tells his parents, he gets penalized.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be. It should be in a way that we interact with the younger generation in a way for them to be able to come to us for any problems, for any issues. And this is quite important, that we have this level of friendship. Or, I mean, they should respect you because you're their parents, but there should be a level of friendship for them to be able to come and speak to you about any issues that you have online. Also, another control we could do is parental control, where a phone that's given to a younger person we can install parental control. And parental control, what it does, there's free versions, and there are versions that are paid. With the free version, of course, it has limited functionality. But with the paid version, of course, you could stop applications, block applications. You could set times where the kids could use the internet. You can also lock off applications that they shouldn't be using. And as well, you could stop them from purchasing stuff online, because sometimes you click on Google Play or Apple App Store, buy an application, pay for it, and it goes automatically onto your credit card.
Yeah, no, I mean, that is some vital information there, because I mean, a lot of us don't realize how much freedom is comes from these pockets of you know, these applications, and it can sort of like lead to different variations and different sites and different ways. Okay, so that's one of the challenges, obviously, is trying to have that control, trying to get the knowledge, trying to also install not just the verbal control and the physical control of maybe having limited times and a balanced sort of style. Because I know a lot of parents, they feel, especially with teenagers, they cannot tell them that, you know what, this is actually too much for you. And I even hear people constantly saying that, I only see them when they come out of the room to eat or use the bathroom. And, you know, that's not acceptable. They don't realize the effects, the negative effects that has, even on them being social, even on them, even with their cognitive sort of like reflexes and sort of performances with their wrist and their hands. And, you know, they just get irritable about a lot of these things. Now that we are in this situation, though, I think it's even more challenging, because we are told to stay at home. And there's only so much you can do at home. I mean, personally, if you were to come to me and get coaching, I will really fill your day and keep it balanced. But, you know, I can't coach everybody, and not everybody comes for coaching. That's why I raise these kind of issues and topics for the wider public, so that they can have some sort of insight as to how they can have a balanced day. And you do need a balanced life. Even in one day, you cannot spend like 4 or 5 hours on the screen. And if you are, don't let it be just on games. You can actually, you know, listen to an audiobook, or you can watch a movie. If you feel that you have to be on the actual social media, you can, you know, read an article, listen to a TED talk. There are so many options out there than you just thinking that I'm going to be playing games, or, you know, doing something that is going to take me away from interacting from my friends or my family. So I feel that even adults, we need to be more disciplined ourselves before we can even have that kind of discipline for our children and people out there. If we don't create these kind of, you know, boundaries and limits, then how are they supposed to have it? So what are the other challenges that you could sort of, you know, talk about? Doesn't matter whether it's adults or whether it's what I've just mentioned, that we are facing right now that we can overcome.
I mean, from a social perspective, you have a lot of people when they have a young person in the house, they put a tablet in front of them during breakfast, because to distract them,
Yeah.
to keep them calm. They don't know how negative that is, because when they grow older, the only way to calm them down is by giving them an electronic device. At the same time, we have like an adult over, I don't know, 40, 50, 60 years old. As soon as they come from work, they sit down and they open their phone just to relax. That's the relaxation. So we're losing that interaction socially. And when a young person sees this, they're going to learn from example, right? So, or they're going to learn from the adult.
Mhm.
So the challenge here is that we need to, in a way, put our devices aside and start talking to each other. I mean, when I was a kid, we used to play board games, and we used to play things on pen and paper. Those days have gone, I know, and there's nothing we could do about it. However, there are a lot of tools on electronic devices where families can interact with each other. There are like Scrabble, for example, where they could play online with each other. There are things, I mean, they could sit next to each other, but, you know, they don't have to have the board game. They could all play on their phone. Or, I don't know, stuff like educational applications that they could do together. They could have discussions about what's happening in the current world, and what they could do to help each other. For example, I mean, when I was a kid, my dad used to take me to his workplace, and I hated going there because he was a carpenter and he did all sorts of things. Uh, I hated going there because I couldn't play my Mega Drive. When I was a kid, I had a Mega Drive, and I had to do work. But then when I grew older, I learned so many things. Everything that needs fixing in the house, now I do it myself. I don't have to pay money for someone to do this for me. Also, I learned how to talk to people, like with customers, with friends, how to be more efficient when I build something or when I make something. I learned how to be more efficient. And we could use that now. We could use the internet. We could learn about, I mean, even if you want to play games for, say you're an addicted gamer and you play for 18 hours, just games, just dedicate 1 hour to learn one skill.
Yeah.
Once a day, once every 3 days. It doesn't matter. Just learn something and gradually have build that discipline for you to control yourself.
No, that's true. There are many options out there if we are creative and innovative. And of course, it starts with the parents, 100%. The other thing is, I think a lot of us also are bombarded by so much information. And I know recently, some people have even messaged on Facebook on their page to say, I'm coming offline and it's actually, having a negative effect on me, and it's hard for them to control what goes there. I mean, I get that to an extent, but again, I feel I personally have got control and self-discipline. So I ignore most of the things anyway, unless it sort of interests me, unless it's a learning. But, I've had to master that over time. And, being a coach and coaching others, you have to sort of implement them yourself. So I can understand that. But there are professionals out there that find it really difficult, that if they listen to something, if they hear something, if they see the news, it really becomes reality. And not everything is useful. Not everything is actually fact, and not everything is actual reality. And we are in this information age, which is really great. I'm not going to say that the internet and the World Wide Web generally, I mean, I remember years ago having to queue for a book in school, and not having Google and not having all of that. It was just introduced when I was probably like in high school or something. But I was fine. But regardless, I speak to youngsters nowadays and I tell them how lucky they are to have everything at their fingertips. But at the same time, it does raise the issue of them not being patient and also wanting things very quickly. And I think for me, especially what's happening around us, slowing things down, the whole pandemic, we can't really sort of not address that, has made us realize, okay, even though we have challenges in social media, we have to rethink our living. We have to be more patient. We have to have a balanced life. If we think that it's only about work or it's only about materialism, again, it's sort of that's all taken away. And we are adapting to just being at home with our family and just the basics and the essentials. And that's really crazy. And I think that if the internet or the electricity went off, then what would we do? And that's another issue to raise. What would children do? And when I always hear parents myself saying, oh, but they're bored, and as if it's a bad thing. I do a lot of studies, and actually when you are saying you're bored and when you're doing nothing, that's actually when your brain is creative. When you actually give and allow yourself that space to do nothing, that's when you become creative. But we constantly, just like how when you watch a movie after reading a book, we always say that the movie wasn't as great, no matter how great that technology and the cinematics and everything was, is because our imagination is so vast that nobody and nothing can compare. So if you use that example, and it's okay, kids, to be bored, and parents, it's all right for your kids to be bored. That's what I'm trying to say, because that's when you really create. You be open to, like you said, you would do things that you wouldn't normally do. You didn't have your game, so you just forced yourself to do it. But because parents are actually, allowing their kids, I see 1-year-olds who can barely hold things, are given mobile phones to look at. Where are the toys? Where are the rattles? Where are the normal, things that, a 1-year-old will even play with? And that's even taken away now. It's a tablet, it's the phone, even if they're in their pushchair around and I get worried looking at these kids, looking at their phones constantly. And this is the reality we're facing today. It's really worrying, actually. So I think those are the real challenges, is our way of thinking, to be honest.
I personally think that we are getting lazy. We're getting we're just getting too lazy. For example, when you mention toys, how hard it is to clean up Play-Doh, You know how hard it is to clean up kinetic sand, or it's just too much work. And today's parents, they can't be bothered anymore.
Mm.
Whereas, older generation, they do a lot of things themselves by hand, without electronic devices, or without even having electronic tools with them. But obviously, as humans, as we're advancing, we're becoming lazy, and eventually, we're going to get to a point where we're going to be wearing headsets. There actually exist these technologies. The VR headset, you could buy them. They're quite expensive now, but I think in the next 5 years, they're going to be widely available at an affordable price. And I think what will happen is that we're going to come from work, sit on our couches, put them on, and then just next day. That's how I feel is going to happen. Because what happened in the 1920s when the newspaper was first invented, I think it was 1910, 20s, when the newspaper was invented, the rich was able to afford that.
Yep.
And what happened is that people felt, these guys are, what happened to social life? What happened to social interaction? People are reading the newspapers all the time on the train, on the bus. It was really annoying. But what happened now is that we're having the same problem with electronic devices, and that's a problem.
Definitely. I think what we are is that we're trying to actually escape reality and live in this virtual world, and we want to get into that virtual world. Like when you mentioned that sort of VR, is that what it's called? I really don't know what it is.
Virtual reality.
Yeah, virtual reality, that's it. Okay. And this artificial intelligence kind of stuff, with trying to live in this virtual world. I think that yes, when we watch these futuristic movies, I can't think of the names right now, it's quite scary because it's actually coming to that. And I don't know what it's actually going to do for us as humans. I don't know what it's actually going to do for us as, having that natural instinct, the natural connection and need. And I think this sort of situation that we're faced with right now is bringing us back to the organic, the authentic sort of way and lifestyle of living. But again, the only thing is actually bringing us back into that sort of world, not necessarily materialistic, but that virtual world, is social media. Even though we're at home, we're not actually connecting with our families and friends. We might do certain times, but we're not having those actual proper, vocal conversations. Unless it's like, to sort of say, let's have dinner or, whatever. Now we obviously we can't go out and we're in each other's faces. So I think, the real challenge actually now is being in this kind of way and not escaping it, and not using that as a negative way of living still.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, the issue we have is that we are now using the internet to solve our personal problems outside. Whereas people who have mental health, they go on the internet for advice, for example. And it's not a really good thing all the time because they don't get the right level of information based on their needs. Also, at the same time, we have the families, they don't treat each other in a way that whenever there's a problem, they think, you know what, I don't want to tell my family because they might look down to me, or I could get a better advice from, I don't know, Bob in South America, I don't know, or Tony from Russia, for example, I'm saying. Whereas now, we're just using the internet to kind of fill that void that we have, that gap, that the time that we have, where we could benefit us in many ways. I mean, for me, I must admit, I use the internet quite a lot. For me to relax, like ecstasy. It's like a drug. It's like an addiction. I sit on my phone and I just relax just by going through certain pages.
You think you're relaxing, though. That's the thing. You're not relaxing.
You're not.
That's the problem.
Yeah, and that's the thing. When you look at it from a logical perspective, it does affect you emotionally because there are certain things you can't live up to. At the same time, you're breaking that interaction with your families and friends. I mean, listen, the internet is good that you use it all the time for a lot of good things. You could talk to people from all parts of the world, especially in this pandemic. You could talk to your family, your mom and dad, if they're not living with you, or with your brothers and sisters, or with your friends, anywhere in the world. It's really good. But if we misuse it and abuse it, it will affect us in the long term.
No, that's true. I've always said, look, I'm not here to sort of like talk about it as being like it shouldn't be used. Like I said, life is all about balance, but I think that our balance has been tipped, and it's more likely tipped to, you know, having an adverse detrimental effect because we're not balancing out the hours and the amount. And yes, we can talk online, we can interact. And when you're talking about, you know, talking to Bob, well, now we have Coach Talk and we have Fahima here. If you need to talk, you know, talk to someone professional. There are a lot of people even on the internet giving relationships advice, giving success advice, whatever it may be, but they're not trained and they're actually talking from their own experience, which is okay. But people have to understand that when you come from a background where it's substantial with credits, then it's like I always give a balanced view, for example, even if there was a couple coming to me with some sort of issues. So that's why I have, you know, created Coach Talk to make, you know, the wider audience aware of coaching. It is definitely a safe space, and it's actually very, very non-judgmental, and it can really help people. And again, when it comes to you being on social media, yes, it is a challenge. Again, it's all about having our own self-discipline. It's about knowing what is good for you, because as much as it might be fun to be on the games right now, you really are going to be selling yourself short in the future with, you know, your actual brain activity, with your social activity, with psychology in general. And you, no matter what, as much as you want to escape, and you might be doing it for years, you know, from a young child to a teenager or a young adult on the internet, when you go out into the big wide world, and you have to at some point, whether you like it or not, at university or just at work, it will show. It will show in your character. It will show in your personality, with regards to how open you are. Yes, we are all different, but if you're going to take this upon yourself to really be out of the virtual, be into the virtual world and out of reality, even if you have information, you just would not know how to deliver that in a particular way because you're not interacting with other individuals in that way. And to have that one-on-one, to actually see each other, to make, I mean, I personally, I will pick up the phone and call. I wouldn't just message randomly people, and, you know, and message everybody on my contact list, even during this time, whether they answer me or not, that's on them. That's fine. I've done my duty. And it can be used for definitely good things. But I still think that there are so much more challenges, which is not good for you, especially with information. And I think we do need to be more aware of that. And we need to build that self-discipline. It really takes hard work, and it takes that urgency, knowing that I have to get off this phone. I have to get off my laptop. I have to finish this game. And it never ends. You got to set yourself a timer. You got to set yourself other tasks, whatever it takes. It is absolutely possible.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I mean, a lot of companies, their sole purpose is to collect information about you. And currently, in this time now, is the perfect time to collect all that information because you do polls and surveys to kill time. You visit certain websites, you put your personal details. Sometimes they collect things about your devices. So there are a lot of things that they do to collect that information. I mean, even your Apple phone or your Google phone or Android, whenever you use your fingerprint to log in or your facial recognition, that's all that information is being stored in a database somewhere around the world. So they collect information about you. You have to be very careful about what you share online. At the same time, you should protect yourself with regards to antivirus, parental control, patching, speaking
What
to
is
each other about your
patching?
interaction.
Sorry, I haven't heard of that, patching.
No, I mentioned that patching is when you when a manufacturer like Microsoft or Apple release patches to close a vulnerability within a their operating system or the actual device. Now, I've got my own YouTube channel called Abdullah Nagem. You could Google it, and I talk about these quite a lot. Talk about information security. I do a lot of technology reviews, and I talk about parental control and talk about keeping kids safe online. And these are important because there are a lot of issues online where they could collect information about you and store that information for future use. But we can protect ourselves by limiting the information we send from our phones, or we interact with the internet or with those websites. At the same time, we could look after our devices, antivirus, like I mentioned, and other things. Talk to each other. Don't go to chat rooms. If the kids do visit, or if a young person visits a chat room, find out who they're talking to, what they've experienced, what they saw, what they talked about. Just engage in a way, not in a way that you're going to be punishing them, in a way that you're going to try to build that bond, try to talk to them. You could, you could learn about oil painting, and I've been doing oil painting for last couple of years. I'm not an expert.
Is that your
With a,
painting behind then?
no, that's no, no, that's a famous painting actually. That one, it's a print. But I do. This is a good point, because I do look at these videos about these famous prints, and I try to mimic them, because there's people out there who teach you how to do these things. And this is what we could use the internet for. We could use it for learning DIY. We could learn. We could use the internet to fix something that we have in the house, or several times I had an issue with my car, and I thought, oh my God, that's going to cost me 200, 300 pounds. I don't know, 500 pounds. But then when I found out how to do it online, it was a simple job, and I did it myself, straightforward. And there's a lot of things you could learn, I mean, online. So even
Definitely.
as families, we should learn a skill set that we could all use together. I know it's going to be a bit messy with painting. They could use acrylic or water-based colors, but still, it's an activity, especially now in this pandemic, where we're stuck in the house, we can't leave the house. People who live, unfortunately, on small flats, and it's difficult for them to leave, or without a garden or without a balcony. So it's best to, get that interaction, learn something online to help you as a family to bond. There's so many activities you could do together.
No, that's really good advice, actually, because I mean, I know that people are finding themselves quite bored, and even now they're bored of their phones and even what's online. So use, the internet, use social media for your advantage. And the first week will be cleaning the house, the second week will be on social media or watching videos. Now we're coming up to the third week, and who knows how long this is going to last. It would be nice, because we don't know what we're going to come back to be honest. So if you were to use a hobby, learn a new skill, or do something that you have to fix yourself, because we don't have that sort of service and out there right now even available, which is really good. That is definitely useful advice, and that's good for responsible people. But the ones that are not responsible, you need to really take into account what this actually means for you, and especially your psychology. I sort of study a lot about this, and it's really, really detrimental for you to have too much of anything, to be honest, and especially something like social media. Yes, your details will be definitely at the bottom of the screen, the description. And if you ever want to reach Abdullah for some personal advice or tips, go onto his YouTube channel or contact him personally by message. And I'm sure he can give you, especially as parents, more one-on-one advice as to what it is that you need to take care of. And even yourself, I mean, we are in this world where we are giving information because sometimes it's the easiest way to do shopping or, do transfers and whatever. So we are open, and we're not sure who's getting that information and where, but that's another topic for another sort of episode. But for now, just be careful, be safe. Not just outside, but you really got to be safe inside within social media. It's really, really dangerous out there, especially if you don't know, the real people who you're speaking to, or what are the apps, or what are the other things that in areas and sort of places that you can be taken to. You really need to be more aware of it. And maybe even another thing, especially for younger kids, try not to be in a space where it's always in their room, so that if you are, I don't know, I know we don't have the space all the time, but if they are playing a lot, have their door open so you can walk in, you can actually speak to them, so that, if you do see them acting out a little bit, and if they're feeling, as if maybe they might not share with you, but you can maybe gauge from their response and their reaction that actually there is something that's not right. There is so much going on that, people don't really have that word to address, then you might pick up on it a lot sooner. And that could be a way of maybe gauging as to, is it actually innocent or not? Or is there something that is off or not? So finally, before we come to the end of this episode, it's gone really quickly. You've given lots of advice, and you've given lots of, awareness. Would you like to sort of have some sort of closing statement before we end?
Absolutely. So ideally, I think the internet is not a bad thing. It's a great location. It's a great virtual space with a vast amount of knowledge about everything. And we could utilize that to the best, especially now. However, there are dangers online, especially with some of the vulnerabilities, or some of the malicious software or malicious people on the internet trying to hack into your system. At the same time, there are issues with regards to social media and how it portrays life towards us, and we try to follow that. So ideally, what we need to do is use it to our benefit and be more understanding of some of the dangers online, and try to prevent that risk towards us.
No, definitely. Thank you so much.
Thank
This is
you.
obviously my first episode for the new, coach talk that I've sort of, decided on, and I really appreciate your time. I know that you're very busy still with work because your work's not stopping at this moment. And if there is anybody out there that want to reach you, please do so, because you will get that one-to-one personal contact, and I'm sure Abdullah would be really, really helpful in helping, especially parents, or even making awareness for kids, because he's given talks in schools and he's raised sort of a lot of insights that we're not aware of. So you can have more control, feel safer, and still, enjoy the social media, but with all the measures put in place. And that's what we want you to have. I hope to see you in the next discussion. And hopefully, thank you, viewers. Thank you, Abdullah, for your time. I really appreciate it. And if there's any comments, if there's anything that you want to raise, please do so. Please subscribe to the channel so that if you want to have future notification, and there will be different topics that are going to be raising each week, and hopefully this can be useful for yourself. Please do message me, please subscribe, and I do appreciate you viewing right now. Take care, stay safe and well, and I'll be seeing you soon. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.